Thank you for watching QTV with the news. My name is Diana Sumbwe. The headlines. Patriotic Front Malole Member of Parliament Christopher Iluma has welcomed his expulsion from his party's Central Committee. And Rainbow Party General Secretary Winter Kabimba says the impending national dialogue can still take place whether the church is involved or not. And now details in our news. Patriotic Front Malole Member of Parliament Christopher Iluma has welcomed his expulsion from his party's Central Committee. Mr. Iluma, who is also Minister of Commerce, says that there is nothing sinister about his expulsion because the party has powers to hire and fire. He has told journalists in Lusaka that he is relieved by his expulsion, especially given the burden of his work, stressing that the move will help him to mobilize the party ahead of the 2021 general elections. Mr. Iluma has since pledged to rally behind the Patriotic Front and to ensure that the party gets more votes in the 2021 general elections as compared to the 2016 elections. He says he remains a member of Parliament and will continue to remain loyal to the party.
I'll tell you one thing, I'm a solid PF. I belong to PF, and the office of the Secretary General, they are responsible for maintaining the positions. So, yes, I was expelled as a member of Central Committee, and which, as a member of PF, the authority has got the mandate to appoint, to hire and expel. So, yes, that was the thing. But I am a member of Parliament for Malole constituency, and that is now between me and the people of Malole who voted for me. And I'll still remain the same way I've worked tirelessly to ensure that PF gets the seat. I'll continue working the same way. Because, by the way, I wasn't immediately, when I came in, appointed as a member of Central Committee. I think...
In a letter dated March 18, 2019, addressed to Mr. Iluma, Patriotic Front Secretary General Davis Muida explained that the Malole lawmaker has been expelled for missing Central Committee meetings for 3 consecutive times. In the Central Committee, Mr. Iluma held the position of chairperson for mines. Rainbow Party General Secretary Winter Kabimba believes that the impending national dialogue can still take place whether the church is involved or not. Mr. Kabimba has urged stakeholders to consider finding another institution to lead the national dialogue if the church as a grouping is in the position to preside over the dialogue process. He has told Q News that the church was in fact not the only institution that was capable to preside over the dialogue process in the first place. Mr. Kabimba is of the view that there are many individuals in the country that are capable to lead the national dialogue just as much as the church can possibly do. He says this is why he does not think the national dialogue should collapse, owing to the fact that the church mother bodies that were earlier engaged in the process are having problems. The Rainbow Party leader states that government should in this case ensure that the dialogue process is put in motion in order that some of the issues affecting the country can be addressed. He states that the national dialogue is still important and he does not think government can do without it.
The church was everybody's first preference to preside over the national dialogue. But it was not the only institution. There are many institutions that can preside over the national dialogue just as well as the church should have done. There are many individuals in this country that are capable of chairing and presiding over the national dialogue, just like the church has done. So the fact that the church as a grouping is having problems, or they are having problems amongst themselves, does not mean that the national dialogue should collapse. I think the stakeholders can still look somewhere else to find somebody or another institution to chair the national dialogue. All that I'm saying is that if they are not in a position to preside over the national dialogue, I think as stakeholders, they should look elsewhere, find people or another institution that can preside over the national dialogue. That's our position as Rainbow Party.
The Media Institute of Southern Africa MISA Zambia chapter has called for transparency in the process of enacting the approved Access to Information Bill. MISA Vice Chairperson Haita Guta says his organization also expects that the approved bill will this time around be presented before Parliament and reach enactment stage. Speaking at a media briefing held in Lusaka, Mr. Aguta has also urged members of Parliament to debate the bill in the interest of the Zambian people above their own personal interests. Mr. Aguta has further called on government to take due democratic process in enacting cyber laws by making the process as transparent as possible. He says MISA expects government to engage stakeholders before enacting these laws.
The last 16, 17 years, we've been advocates and pioneers of the access to information. We've seen this bill go to Parliament and come out. It exceeds 5 times. It has gone to Parliament and comes out, in and out. And excuses have been mainly given by those that wield the political will to give us what is our right. So 5 times in about 16 years, that has been the status quo. Yesterday, last night, we heard from the Minister of Information and Broadcasting Services, Honorable Doris Ria, through her tweet that Cabinet has finally approved the ATI bill to go to Parliament. That's what it means. Now, we're grateful that that pronouncement has been made, and we're happy that that should be the direction, that we should have the ATI bill enacted into law. That's the position, and that's the cry that we've had, and we're happy about it, and we want to see that it is done so expeditiously. That's the first thing. However, we'd like also to take note that they have.
Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Malanji has assured foreign diplomats accredited to Zambia that government had no hand in the suspension of Prime TV's license. Mr. Malanji says government does not interfere in the investigations and decisions that the Independent Broadcasting Authority IBA makes. He states that the IBA is an independent investigation authority. Mr. Malanji was speaking when he met diplomats accredited to Zambia in Lusaka following concerns they raised on the suspension of the local TV station's broadcasting license. Mr. Malanji has reiterated that the sanction imposed on the TV station is meant to enable it to comply with the set media ethics. He states that the Patriotic Front government remains committed to ensuring that freedom of expression is enjoyed by all in the country. Commerce, Trade and Industry Minister Christopher Eluma has disclosed that as at December 2018, Zambia's export to Egypt stood at a mega 1.3 million United States dollars. Mr. Eluma says imports from Israel to Zambia were just over 108 million United States dollars. Speaking at the business-to-business meeting with the Egyptian business delegation, Mr. Eluma says the trade and investment between the two countries is thus not encouraging. Mr. Eluma says this is especially that there is growing interest for the two countries to do business. He notes that his concern is that while there are many Egyptian companies investing in Zambia, none of the Zambian companies are investing in Egypt. A delegation of Egyptian investors is in the country to explore investment opportunities in various sectors of the economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, both Zambia and Egypt are members of COMESA, and we are both fully committed to taking advantage of the market access it provides. Besides our political and bilateral commitments that our two countries have, my considered view is that trade and investment is one of the most effective instruments to deepen our relationships and integrate further as a region. It is for this reason that I call upon you, the private sector, representatives from both countries, to take advantage of this political goodwill and attractive policies that are in place to establish mutually beneficial business relations. The best way, ladies and gentlemen, is for us to evaluate our respective strengths in terms of competitive and comparative advantages as a basis to forge business relations. We can also learn from each other on how to develop certain.
And speaking at the same event, head of the delegation, Sheriff El Gabali, says promoting the African agenda is at the heart of his country's foreign policy. And Egyptian ambassador to Zambia, Ahmed Mustafa, says despite the revolution in his country, Egypt will fulfill its commitment to African countries, including Zambia.
Today, we see that step being achieved exactly like we wanted. The Federation of the Egyptian Industries took the initiative to send this distinguished delegation, which comprises an assortment of the most active businessmen in Egypt, who are willing to start all types of business here in Zambia. So, I invite their Zambian counterparts to seize this opportunity and establish contacts and even start deals.
Meanwhile, Zaki President Michael Nyirenda says international trade plays a vital role in economic development as it contributes to the growth of the economy. Mr. Nyirenda is hopeful that the meeting with the Egyptian delegation will yield results.
Ladies and gentlemen, doing business in energy transition involves making choices. There's one, William Blazer, who said at some point that there's a choice of theory which actually works in that there's a behavior not separate from choices as well as what we think. Or we choose how to behave at any time. Choice theory has 10 axioms, but however, I'll only explain the two vital ones. And these are, firstly, the only person whose behavior we can control is ourselves. And secondly, all we can truly give another person is only information about ourselves. The lack of information among traders on opportunities between the two nations has been substantial factor contributing to low trade volumes between the two countries. In this regard, this Zambia-Egypt Business Forum, such as this one, actually creates a platform that will help in disseminating this information on investment and business opportunities.
National Guidance and Religious Affairs Minister Reverend Godfrida Sumaili has ordered cadres to stop flashing out party symbols when singing the national anthem. Reverend Sumaili says that such gestures are against the National Anthem Act No. 40 of 1973 as well as the National Anthem Amendment Act No. 13 of 1994. And Reverend Sumaili has also expressed concern that most citizens have lost respect for the national flag, as evidenced by how some institutions are fly-torn flags even in the night. He says statutory instrument number 270 of the 1965 and the National Flags and Memorial in Signs Act number 13 of 1994 national flags provide that the flag will only fly from sunrise to sunset. In a ministerial statement in Parliament on national consciousness and identity, Reverend Sumaili further expressed concern the Zambian coat of arms is being misrepresented. Reverend Sumaili has observed that some coat of arms are being displaced in the country are in wrong colors and designs.
It is very, very sad, Mr. Speaker, that on Independence Day, some people decide not to be available to celebrate with the people that day. They say they need. This is Zambia. And that independence which we got did not come cheaply. They fought for independence. And we have to, it is an opportunity on Independence Day to thank our forefathers for what they did, but also it is a time for us to show appreciation to God for this freedom that He has given to us. It's a time that we have to come together as one people and celebrate together. Yes, I think that when we come to national events,
the Speaker of the National Assembly, Patrick Matibeni, has ruled in favor of opposition UPND members of Parliament on a point of order raised by Southern Province Minister Edfai Hamkale on their recent protest walkouts from the House. The point of order came as a result of a recent trend in the House of UPND members of Parliament walking out of the House. Immediately, Minister for Housing and Infrastructure Development, Ronald Chitotela, rises to address the House or respond to a question. But in his ruling, Dr. Matibeni says walkouts do not amount to a breach of the rules of the House or indeed parliamentary practice and procedure. He says UPND members of Parliament were not out of order to have walked out of the House. Dr. Matibeni says this is especially that the members of Parliament that walked out on that day did return to the House shortly after what appeared to be an impromptu caucus or consultation. He has, however, reiterated that there are negative effects to walkouts for the electorate and the smooth running of the business of the House.
Furthermore, I would like to add that since walkouts, absent of House rules to guide their conduct, and granted that at any rate, the very sense or nature of a walkout, a means through which a member or members are entitled to express their displeasure on a particular matter of subject, it does not and cannot lie on the Speaker or indeed any presiding officer to regulate, adjudicate, or indeed pass judgment on the right from the term.
Meanwhile, Dr. Matibeni says Finance Minister Margaret Manakatwe uttered contradictory statements on the floor of the House and, as a consequence, misled the House on 13th December 2018. This was after UPND Member of Parliament for Kapiri Mposhi raised a point of order against Mrs. Manakatwe for allegedly misleading the House by giving two contradictory positions in response to similar questions on the said day. In his ruling, the Speaker says it is clear from the vertebrim record that the Minister of Finance gave two different positions in response to the same question.
Honourable members, it is clear from the verbatim record that the Honourable Minister of Finance gave two different positions in response to the same question. In her statement, the Honourable Minister of Finance informed the House that the decline in the country's foreign reserves was partly on account of debt service, including coupon interest payments on the Eurobonds. In her later statement, she indicated that the government does not use its foreign reserves to service Eurobonds, but that the government used its own earnings to pay for Eurobonds. Honourable members, upon assessing the Honourable Minister's two statements,
Zamtel Chief Executive Officer Sidney Mupeta says Zamtel is expected to build 100 communication towers in Luapula Province. Speaking during the launch of the 76th communication tower in Mansa, Mr. Mupeta says Zamtel will have built 700 communication towers, which will mainly be located mostly in rural areas by the end of 2019. He adds that this is in line with the 7th National Development Plan, which is aimed at providing communication and access to all. Mr. Mupeta says Zamtel is deliberately choosing Mansa and the entire Luapula province as one of its priority areas for investment due to its immense economic potential. Our staffer Martha Katambi has more in this report.
Access to information and good communication is an essential part to the development of any nation. And to help support this, Zamtel has embarked on enhancing good communication services through installation of communication towers. And so far, Zamtel has launched its 76th communication tower in Mansa in Luapula Province. During the commissioning, Zamtel Chief Executive Officer Sidney Mupeta explains that Zamtel is targeting rural areas to help bring development through communication.
You will be interested to know that at the end of this project, Luapula is going to have a total of 100 sites. Ukuta kulo kweka imilongoti yalafika kuli 100 unawilete mwaka. You also want to know that before this project, Luapula province had only 20 sites for Zamtel. Kamyari okutira iyo tatulaambe imilimo tulele shapo mnochungulo ala mkwai kunu mokutu akwete fye milongoti ala Zamtel 20. And I also want to mention that Zamtel has put a lot of priority in this province, the province, and so far we have erected a total of 56 sites, and we have a total in the province, including the old ones, 76 sites.
Health Minister Dr. Stadu Chilufya was guest of honor.
If you have a Zamtel phone, you will get SMS messages that will help you prevent many diseases, that will promote wellness. And that way, you'll be benefiting from your own investment. This is plowing back into the community. So the PF government, led by His Excellency President Gachagua, will promote the growth of such parastatals and will support corporate social responsibility programs that enhance service delivery. So today we recognize you as a critical ally for universal health coverage. And again, I say thank you very much. Wabena mansa oyumulimo ole bombeka lero mulimo kalambanga shibatratila okwalinsoke takwafuile muntu.
And earlier, Zamtel also made donations of assorted items to Mansa General Hospital valued at a cost of 60,000 kwacha. The items include thermometers, blankets, bed sheets, bathroom scales, among others. It is evident that Zamtel's efforts to enhance communication will help bring development to the rural parts of the country. Martha Katambi, reporting for QTV News in Mansa, Luapula Province.
Pensions and Insurance Authority PIA Registrar Martin Libinga has hailed the role the media plays in informing and educating the public on insurance and pensions. Mr. Libinga says the media is a powerful tool for disseminating messages for promotion of change on consumption of financial products, which include insurance and pensions. He said this in a speech read on his behalf by the Deputy Registrar Titus Nukwale at the second Media Engagement and Training Workshop in Lusaka. And Mr. Libinga notes that through such engagements, the authority will be providing the media with relevant information to enhance understanding of concepts surrounding the pensions sector.
And so this workshop will enhance your understanding of the sector, especially the legal framework surrounding it and the players in it and how they contribute to the economy, as already mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may be aware, government is championing the financial inclusion agenda, and the Pensions and Insurance Authority has a role to play in achieving these objectives, the objectives of this strategy. One of the key areas we are working on is market conduct regulations. Market conduct regulations focuses on fair treatment of customers. This year we have been working with World Bank, giving us technical support, and we shall be rolling out what are known as key facts statements. These will be minimum mandatory disclosures that an insurance company is supposed to give to the customer at the point of sale. And we are quite confident and hopeful that this will address some of the challenges we have been facing in this very important area of the market, that is the interaction between the service provider and the client. I therefore hope that this workshop will lead to the publishing and airing.
The Medicine Transparency Alliance META has reiterated the need to increase the target of the number of adolescents to reach out to this year to provide sexual reproductive health services if the country is to win the teenage pregnancy fight. META National Coordinator Lioka says government should, in partnership with various stakeholders, target to reach out to at least over 2 million adolescents with various health and social services as a measure of fighting teenage pregnancies. Mr. Lioka said concerted efforts is key in fighting teenage pregnancies, another health challenge faced by the young people, especially in the country. He has agreed with President Edgar Lungu's sentiments that teenage pregnancies undermine the rights of the girls and compromises their opportunity to fully realize their potential.
We need to do more in order to for the country to eradicate or reduce this vice across the whole nation. We commend that in the coming year we double the figure that was achieved in the previous year. The President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Edgar Lungu, did mention that teenage pregnancies undermine the rights of girls and compromises their opportunity to fully realize their potential. The potential as a statement of substantive fact, and of course it is backed by empirical evidence, that girls that find themselves in this situation actually cannot fully attain their full potential in many spheres of life, including education. We want to say that government has done a commendable job in the implementation of the adolescent health strategy. And we note that it has become increasingly difficult for young people, to act.
Lusaka City Council has given developers who have occupied uncertified buildings 3 months grace period in which to re-regularize the illegality or risk being penalized. Lusaka City Council Public Relations Manager George Chimba says it is a requirement by law that before occupying a new building, the occupation certificate must be obtained to certify that the building is fit for occupation. Mr. Chimba says partial occupation also requires certification under Section 15 of the Public Health Act, however stating that the council has discovered that many developers have not been following the requirements of the law, as many of them have occupied uncertified buildings. He states that the local authority has therefore accorded an opportunity to such people to re-regularize the illegality by applying and paying approved fees. He explains that the approved fees are 1,771 kwacha, 56 ingwe, and not over 1.7 million as earlier stated. Industrial buildings 1,328, 67 ingwe, and not over 1.3 million kwacha as earlier stated. For commercial buildings 885 kwacha, 78 ingwe for institutional buildings, and 531 kwacha, 47 ingwe for high-cost residential buildings. To end the news, we take a look at stories making headlines once again. Patriotic Front Malole Member of Parliament Christopher Eluma has welcomed his expulsion from his party's Central Committee. And Rainbow Party General Secretary Winter Kavimba says the impending national dialogue can still take place whether the church is involved or not. On that note, we come to the end of the news. Thank you for watching.